everybody, welcome back for another Shoulda Boosted, episode 32, and for this one here, we're going to do some drinking and brawling. Mark, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. I can't bitch too hard.
Now, some of our viewers or listeners, I guess, might be confused because last time we were doing part 1 of the Legion CID, so they're probably expecting the part 2. However, the part 2 is all the new stuff, and we're going to be waiting until the official rules are out so that we're not going to talk about some things that might be changed right away. So expect that in the coming weeks. But today, we are going to be talking about Brawlmachine, and it should be a hell of a great conversation because I love Brawlmachine. And Mark, I don't know if hate is the right word, but dislikes extremely strongly. I don't know. Mark, how would you put it?
No, hate is definitely the right word.
Oh, okay. There we go.
100%, man.
So the problem we had with this conversation is that, me and Mark are buddies, and so we probably couldn't get to fighting unless there's some drinking. So, Mark, what do you got for drinking for this fight today?
Well, I was going to go with my standard lovely bottle of Jack, but then I figured I'd class it up a bit, and I have some clear shit that I don't know what it's called because it's from my buddy Brad Post. Yeah, he went on vacation somewhere in Europe. I don't remember where he said it was, but I cannot read this bottle to save my life. I think it's vodka, so we're going to go with that.
Sure. Something vodka is always a good one. I'm not going with that strong of stuff. I have some Merlot here, and I'm just going to class it up even more, and I'll be drinking this from a jar. So, that's what us rednecks in Alberta do.
Yeah, some jar Merlot.
So yeah, the plan for today is we're going to talk about what Brawlmachine is, and then we're going to start just jumping into it, talking about why I love it. We'll talk about why Mark hates it, and then we got some of your questions or comments and things that you want us to talk about, so we'll be covering it there too. I guess before we do that, I guess it's worth saying that we do have an event coming up. September 5th is where we have our next Relax Steamroller, and I guess if you're not in Edmonton, this doesn't really apply to you. But I gotta say, Mark, I get a lot of comments about people being jealous that we're actually getting events here in the pandemic.
Well, yeah, I can definitely see where a lot of people aren't running events, and it's going to suck for people that aren't. But having an event where pants are optional, it's always a good thing. That's what you meant by relax, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Doyle feels this right at home at these events here.
But he can't come!
So I mean, maybe that's just me bragging that we actually get to have some events here, but otherwise, I guess we just might as well jump into it. So, Mark, do you want to start off by saying what Brawlmachine is, or should I start with it?
Oh, I can start if you really want.
All right, you tell us what you see Brawlmachine as, and I'll start drinking this delicious Merlot.
Okay, so Brawlmachine, stupid waste of time. Boom, end of the cast.
I almost spat my wife.
Fastest podcast ever.
All right, maybe I'll put it my way.
Okay, fine.
So, Brawlmachine, in a nutshell, is really a fan-made format for War Machine made from the people there at Line of Sight. And what it really is boiled down, so it's only 25 points. It's going to be, I thought only one list. It's now been clarified that at least in tournaments, it's going to be 2 lists. But the main thing is that it's going to be based more so off of specialists. It's also FA1. And then there's more of a kind of a restriction list where there's things like, no huge bases and some other, casters and models are banned as well, like Butcher 3 and Gaspy 4. And of course, that's something that can be modified over time. But the biggest thing that you're getting from this is a smaller format that, to experienced gamers coming in, you might have something where like, hey, it's something new and it's something fresh. But for new players, that's where there's the real benefit, where you're starting smaller and it's something you can really get into and learn without doing the big expense and all the rest of it. And so, I did a whole video about why I love it. But now that we have that base done, Mark, why are you hating this format?
Man, it's just a half thrown together, hey, this could be fun thing. That as much support and thought has gone into it, I still think it's superior, or I guess not superior, but supremely busted. There's things that you can't play with, and I don't think that's very inclusive. For myself as an Infernals player, like straight up, I can't play this format. The FA1 just murders the shit out of Infernals.
I thought you were going to talk about the fact that Infernal Masters are one of the things banned. That
is my other point. Is literally the 3 best things in my faction just aren't allowed. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. So, I mean, I guess one of the things you talked about there is just things being busted. And then the next thing you talked about were things being banned. So let's take this thing one at a time. And just the first thing talking about, like, the things that are busted. So what are you seeing as the things that are busted with Brawlmachine?
Are you talking in terms of my comment of Infernals or just, like, the format in general?
The format in general, whatever you meant by that.
Well, the format in general, I've been playing this game for a long time. And I've seen shit like this happen in the past where somebody comes up with a new format or a journeyman league or some sort of funsy Care Bear fucking format comes along, and you have a meta like ours where, yes, we're going to get 1 or 2 players coming in going, oh, this is fun, I'm going to try it, I'm going to join. But the flip side of that argument is you have everybody else as a shark. If you think there's 75-point lists that are absolutely toxic and cancerous, imagine what's going to happen when you take the core element of those lists and boil it down to just that. And it's literally some of the scariest, most egregious shit ever, all condensed into a handful of models.
Now, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, the big thing that I see when I'm thinking about that, because I got to say that when I first saw this format, I probably was along the same way of thinking as you, where I've seen stuff like this in the past, where like, oh, it'll be a little bit different, and then there's a ban list, and it's never really done right. But the more I looked into it, the more I loved this one. But as far as the part of like the things being busted, I really don't think it's going to be as bad as the 75. I mean, you walk in there in a 75-point game where one person is that new person and the other person is shark, and it's going to be brutal. You're going to get just destroyed, and then that's it. And whereas you're still going to probably just lose that same game in Brawlmachine, the good news is that, I didn't say
this faster.
Well, kind of. Part of it is I didn't mention it's a best of 3. So you can go in there. Oh, okay. You have this one super long super assassination. Well, now instead of me just sitting around for 2 hours, we just restack and we go again. And with my specialist, if I can see like, oh, your assassination was based off of magic. Okay, maybe I put in a solo like Orin or something now for my sideboard. Or maybe you're about shooting. Okay, maybe I'll put in something that'll have like a shield guard or something like that. So there's a little bit more play with it and a little bit more learning for that new player. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a competitive game that we love because the better player will win. But when it comes to things like busted winning, I would rather be in a smaller format where it's best of 3 so that new player is playing again. And then we're about to talk about the ban list. But I mean, the worst things that are going to be the most egregious, those would be the things you're going to see on that ban list.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that aren't that probably should be. And a player that can go to an event and lose 3 games, spend all day, and learn quite a bit, or they can go and lose 12 games and learn absolutely nothing because they got their shit pushed in.
How is one teaching them more than the other? If anything, the 12 games should be teaching you way more.
No, because it's way more. It's smaller, and the scale isn't anywhere close to the same. So you can learn a lot more from a longer game with more moving parts.
So I do agree that a larger game will have more moving parts, but especially if we're looking at that newer player, when you're at 25 points, it's not like this is just a battle box where it's your caster and 2 jacks. We're at the point now where you have a unit, you have a couple of solos, so it's not a full 75-point game, but you're getting a lot of the same interactions that you're seeing in a larger game, just in a smaller scale.
Yeah, sure. For that, like, I'll agree there for sure. But like, taking our meta specifically into account, I don't know how many times in our little group chat that you guys have been talking about this Brawlmachine and, oh, I'm going to try this. Oh, I'm going to try this. And it's some of the most toxic things I've seen in a long time. And just seeing it last week there being played, specifically with Jordan playing against David, having his Vlad 2 with a unit of demo core going, I'm going to wreck the entire table. Like, that's not something a brand new player is going to want to look at.
But I mean, is that anything that's any different than what we had before? I mean, we'd just be like, hey, look at this egregious 75-point list. And then the same thing, right? Jordan might bring out that and then crush somebody the same way. I mean, if anything, the fact that our group has been revitalized and talking about the different things you can take in this is really showing off that advantage for veteran players where it's like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I can agree there. But it is quite a bit different from the larger game to the smaller, because these smaller games, every single model is super pivotal. So this experienced player that has this broken ass tactic or broken ass combo that'll just borderline shit all over this brand new opponent who doesn't know these combinations or doesn't understand how X, Y, and Z synergize. I think it's way more devastating than it would be in a 75-point game to lose a heavy or two heavies and then still have the rest of your army as a chance to retaliate.
So it's sounding to me like you're talking about gotchas. And I mean, we've seen these in the 75-point games as well, where you go to a tournament, you're doing amazing. Oh, crap, I forgot about this one interaction. Now I'm dead. Isn't it better, though, to have that best 2 out of 3 system where now you're going right directly back in and be like, okay, now I know that I had vengeance. Okay, now I know whatever interaction it was, and you can play that again. Isn't that better to be in that type of a system where it's the best 2 out of 3?
I don't think that well, actually, I didn't even know about that part, to be completely honest with you. I wasn't, as far as I've read. But having that system, yeah, having the newer player get more of a chance, sure. I think that's more beneficial. As an experienced player going into a tournament, like I said, that's been playing this game and it's been this standard for so long, I don't see that being an appealing thing to me.
Yeah, I mean, looking at any type of other sport where, you know, that's how the big games are done. When it comes to the playoffs, it's best of 7, best of whatever. And I think that's where you can really see the reason why they're doing, because, I mean, you sometimes see that the better player in a game doesn't win because of a small little gotcha or a little blip of bad luck. And all of a sudden, this best of 3 really fixes that a lot. And the only thing is, though, is that especially when you're looking at the competitive play, you just can't do that. We don't have time to do that for a 75-point game. So, I mean, for new players, I think it's fantastic because it's a thing where, oh, you lost, let's restack, you can, you know, re-rack, you can learn again. But for, you know, when you're getting more of a competitive play going, it's okay, now I'm not going to be screwed over by that one little thing. I can make sure that it's, at the end of the day, going to be the better player winning because of that.
Okay, I'll concede that point too.
All right. I don't feel like you're drinking enough, Mark. I thought you were going to be, you know, more in my face. How far are you into that vodka so far?
I'm about half a glass so far. I'm a big boy, though, so I got a tolerance.
Attaboy.
I'm working.
Now, this other one, I think it's going to be harder for me to defend because I got to admit that this is a part that I'm, you know, I can see why it's there, but it's not the best format, and that's going to be the ban list. Now, just so we can get that refreshed, do you want to be telling us what are the main things of that ban that you don't like?
Like I said, the main things of this ban list is they went, oh, that's really good. We shouldn't do that. As an Infernals player, it neuters my faction. I can't do anything about it. All the huge bases are banned. I can kind of understand that. But I don't know. I just think it's completely ridiculous. Like, how do they determine what's banned and what's not banned? They've got casters like Krios 1 that's banned because it's a pop and drop feat. But, like, how is that any different from things like Denny 1 or, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like, I know from one side of this, you know, a lot of times whenever people are talking about journeyman leagues or basically any small games, the first thing that always comes up is Butcher 3, where Butcher 3 will just dominate the board, go in there, kill your heavies, and you can't really do anything about it. And so you kind of want a ban list or something like that to stop those things so they don't just dominate the format, make really bad play experiences, but at the same time, where do you draw the line? And that is extremely difficult. And there's certainly ones on the ban list right now that I don't agree with, that I don't think should be there. Other ones that be potentially there, or even just the way it's being dealt with at all. One of the things that I would think could do with a ban list is what happens if a new player comes in and they want to play McKay. They're like, hey, I want to have this big tank caster. And you're like, well, sorry, it's a huge base, so you can't. Or maybe this new player wants to play Butcher 3 and they're not going to dominate the board. They just want to learn it. Well, sorry, it's banned. And we have heard back from Line of Sight saying, well, you don't need to worry about that in those cases because then you just locally can agree not to ban those things and just allow it. But then what's the point of the ban list? So I would rather they handle it in a different way. I don't know what that way would be, but I know that in the past, whenever we've tried doing basically a comp list for 40K or fantasy or whatever it is, it's just impossible because whenever you draw a line in the sand to try and keep the best things out, there's always a next best thing.
I don't know. I'm a big fan of making shit up and doing my own thing.
So, I mean, do you agree, though, that things like Butcher 3 should be banned, or do you think they should even just be completely allowed?
Well, I don't know. In a small format like this, yeah, they probably should be banned because Butcher 3 is the equivalent of a heavy, if not two heavies, as far as damage output goes. He's just egregious. But in that respect, why Butcher 3 and why not things like Karchev? That's still pretty gross.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing to keep in mind is just for like the specifics, this is something that they're always going to be working on and updating. But I mean, like, let's talk about Infernals, because obviously that's one that's really near and dear to your heart. And just saying right off the bat, hey, all Infernal Masters are banned makes it pretty tough for an Infernal player. But I guess, in a small format, when you could be summoning in a couple of heavies, that super just changes it. Now, some of the clarification they've given is that, sure, yeah, you could do something else like ban summoning or say summoning works in a different way, but they don't want to be changing individual rules. They just want something that's like an overarching umbrella. So what do you think? Do you think, again, like they should be like, well, no, they just shouldn't be banned, or should just summoning be banned, or how would you deal with this type of mechanic?
See, this is the fun part of this topic where the confrontationalist in me just wants to sit here and go, no, I wouldn't deal with it because it's stupid and I wouldn't play it. But I don't think you can ban summoning. Like, if you were to put a cap on it, be like, you can summon X amount of times, maybe. But it's too difficult. But with them being as fragile as they are, and I know I'm going to catch flack for that because everybody's going to cry and say, oh, they're so hard to kill with Homo. Which, sure, that's fine. But they are fragile. There are heavily armored lights, and that's all they are.
Well, and I think another thing that you brought in, too, that maybe already balances it, is that they do have the rule that it's FA1. And when you're dealing with Infernals that don't have that many different horrors, well, you're probably already starting with a battle group that has, say, like, your Tormentor and something else. And so that means you're not actually summoning any more Tormentors. You're maybe, starting to have to do your first, like, Desolator, but then you're summoning lights after that. You're not really getting the benefit that you normally would. Do you think that actually then balances out?
I don't think it balances out. Like I said, I think that the fact that these heavies, you can piece trade for them, because that's all this game is. It's 100% about piece trading and how easily or how difficult it is for your opponent. They're so easily removed, especially with not... Actually, wait a second. This whole point is moot because Infernal Masters are banned, so summoning doesn't matter.
Well, I know, but we're talking in a way that they could not be banned. So when they do the reasoning of why they're banned, it's because of the summoning. But if we could make a case of why summoning is actually okay because of, say, FA1 or whatever other reason, then that'd be a reason for them to be unbanned.
You know why they're banned? Because Chandler and Jaden don't play Infernals.
And to be completely honest with you, when I've seen ban lists in the past, there's been a lot of stuff where like, okay, in your meta, Skaven is big, so lots of their stuff is banned. It doesn't really think of the global meta and what things could actually be, but it could be something like that. Maybe to change gears on this whole ban thing, I know what they did in some other areas, say like with the original Blood Bowl, is they had things where like, hey, they just admitted that some teams were better than other, and they would just say that, hey, look, this is a lower tier team and this is a higher tier team, and guess what? If you win with this lower tier team, you kind of get a little bit more street cred for doing things like that. Maybe that's what they should be doing, where, there's kind of like a list of things like, Agathon and Butcher 3 and Haley 2, and being like, look, you can play these, but if you're a vet player and you won, congratulations, you just shot a baby. What's the big victory in that?
Yeah, I guess.
But to you, just like, the ban list just shouldn't exist, or should be done in a different way, or?
I don't know. I just think it's stupid, personally. In every game, there's always going to be this absolutely bonkers, ridiculous, not necessarily combination, but a model that people have problems dealing with. But it's no different than when you're playing these 75 points. There's broken combos, there's broken things, there's things that probably shouldn't exist, but they do. But there's always a way around it. That's what these 2-list formats are for. You can have a list to do X and a list to do Y, but you're not going to have a list to do X, Y, and Z.
So do you like it better now that they've clarified that they did intend it to be a 2-list format, or does that still not change it for you?
Doesn't change a bit.
All right. So let's maybe break this up, because there's basically two ways to be applying Brawlmachine. It's either, something for teaching new players, or it's something for veteran players. And I think your position is fairly clear for veteran players, where it's like, no, I don't like this, just play 75. But what's your position more on for the newer players? Do you think that we should be pushing the 75? Do you think the Battle Box is better for them? Journeyman League? What's your thoughts there?
For the newer players, I 100% support doing a Journeyman League. I think that if you want to do these small, fun little let's go easy on them games, just do the 25, the 35, the little progressive tiers to gradually get them into doing these full 75-point competitive games. That's why these Journeyman Leagues were designed for. You get your hooks in them, get their painting going, do that, and you eventually work your way up to these bigger goals of these 75-point, these tournament games. It's just baby steps, right? I understand that not everybody has the resources out there to completely fund buying an entire army or an entire faction, but these processes they've been built over 20 years now. Privateer Press is going, and it's been working since. I don't know why now they want to, I guess not they, but the people want to make this new format to try and shake things up when things have been working pretty well.
Well, I don't know if they have been working well. Like, I think the design or the concept for Journeyman Leagues was right, where, hey, like you get your hooks in early, say, hey, buy this $50 box, and then every single week or whatever, buy one more model as we slowly get bigger. You can build them, you can paint them, and by the end, hey, look, what do you know? You have a full list. And that as an idea is great in that it gets you financially slowly into the system, and also rule-wise slowly learning what you have and building on it. The problem is that Journeyman Leagues in actual use do not go that way. You have the veterans going in there, knowing what to take, smashing the little people, all the little prizes that they have for painting or anything else are all scooped up by the veteran players, and it's really just this new player going in there and buying things and getting smashed and then kind of losing hope. So, I mean, at least in my experience, Journeyman Leagues were good at grabbing people in the beginning and then losing them. Whereas I'm really feeling like this Brawlmachine with that best 2 out of 3 and the sideboards, you can make these little changes. I mean, you're really just making that upfront purchase right away and saying, just buy 25 points, but then it's really designed more so to teach you the game. so that you're not kind of forced to be like, well, I hope this one purchase will help me for next week, and if not, well, I lose. See you next week type thing.
But that's the thing. Like, you're not being taught the game. You're being taught this downplayed. I don't even know what the right word is, but monstrosity of the game, because it's we're not going to include this. Yeah, we're going to take that out. We don't like that. It's them picking and choosing things that they want to include. So if you're doing these 25, 35, whatever point games, you're still learning the actual full rule set and not what a couple guys in the basement said, maybe we'll bring this rule, maybe we won't bring that rule. I don't know.
So if it was the 25-point list, best 2 out of 3, FA1, but you get rid of the ban, you're allowed to use huge bases, you're allowed to use Butcher 3, Agathon, these things, then you would like that better than Journeyman League?
No, why the ban on FA1s?
Or so you don't like the FA1 either, eh?
No, I think it's completely silly. Like, so there's models out there that are designed to run in pairs. Like, that's 100% how they work at best. So I don't know why FA1 is even a thing.
So maybe one of the things to make clear is that in the latest update that they did to Brawlmachine, some of the things that are made to work in pairs, like what's the combat one of the Tessellator, the new Convergence one?
Yeah, I think so. There's the Negator and the Tessellator.
Yeah, stuff like that. The Negator, you're now able, those are not FA1. And then things that you take as your requisition point where you get 2 of them, you can take 2 of those. But so they have been made some exceptions for those things that are supposed to be working in pairs.
But this is what I mean. Like, why even bother? Just get rid of FA1. There's things that specifically, like those models, they have flank, blah, 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 is another one of those models. Like, it's silly.
Well, and that's why they have that there. I think the main thing overall is they don't want anything being pushed to the point where you're going to be seeing these big skews, right? If you make it FA1, again, this is not from the competitive side. This is more so for the learning side. If you go in and you don't have FA1, you can really push that skew and have a huge, like, defense skew, armor skew, whatever. And I don't care what your sideboard is, unless it's something extreme, you're not correcting for that. But if it's FA1, so look, you can only take 1 Centurion with Arcane Shield, not 2. Well, now that's only 1 model with a big armor I need to worry about. Or if you actually do take Sloan or something like that, there's only so many hunters you can be taking with her. So I think it's really important for what they're trying to do there.
I don't know, man. I still think that even with the FA1, if you, as that specific argument there, people are going to try and bring the most egregious models and they're going to try and break the system. I think that having veteran players playing in this, even against, regardless if it's these new players or it's other veteran players, it's literally going to be them sitting there doing this theory crafting to bring the most broken combination, the strongest possible output they can. It's just how this community is.
But I don't see that as a bad thing. Like, one of the things, like, coming from the other games of like 40K and fantasy, there was not one set point level. You'd be going to this 2,000 point event and you'd be going to this 1,700 point event and whatever. And the big thing is that depending on what that point limit is, you're taking these different things. And that's what this is doing, where all of a sudden where things like, whatever caster with that new one, Azraello or whatever, it doesn't really do anything in 75, but in 25, this is really interesting. And we've already heard this from Hungerford, that he really wishes that we be playing more different point sizes, like 50 points or whatever. And the fact that at least this has the big going with it right now, that people are playing it, I think it's great to seeing people energized to be making new lists that aren't 75 points, looking into options that they haven't normally looked into. Like, don't you see that as a good thing?
That is a good thing. That I will agree. And I'm saying that playing these other point sizes is perfectly fine, and I think it's good, but I just don't think that using this fan-made, quote-unquote, 9th Age of War Machine rule set is a good thing for the community.
Would it? So would you have liked it more if, let's say, in the last keynote, Privateer Press themselves came out and said, "Hey, we're not going to be doing this Journeyman League thing anymore because we really haven't seen the value. We're doing this new one called Brawlmachine." If this was official, coming from the mouth of Hungerford, would you be behind it then, or is it just that fact that it's coming from a fan?
I honestly think it's the main thing for me that it is fan made, and there's not nearly as much thought and effort put behind it as the full game is, and the fact that this game has had this standard and this rule set, and they work so hard, and there's how many dozens of people that work on getting this as a finished product out to the community, as like I said before, as opposed to 2, 3, 4 guys going, okay, I think this could be cool, let's do this, as a side part-time thing. Like there's not nearly as much, I don't want to say effort put into it, but quality put into it as the actual full rule set.
Yeah, and of course, this is what they're trying to do now. Like right now, it's basically in its beta. They're having a lot of people testing it the best they can, so it's not really even fully developed. But one thing I will say to your side is that if you were to look into something like Magic the Gathering, where there's lots of different formats, standard, modern, commander, all these different things, the big thing is that that's a massive community. And like it or not, War Machine does not have that big of a community and probably cannot have the size to justify and maintain multiple formats. So in my mind, this Brawlmachine probably has to be really something very much focused on a period where you're trying to get in new players, basically replacing the Journeyman League idea. But, if nothing else, I like it how it's energizing people. But there's been a few things I wasn't talking about because we had some questions and comments made by our users. So maybe we can jump into those now. The first one here is from Henry Eichhorn. This seems like the perfect format for huge base casters like Resnick 2 or McKay. Are they just too hard to kill in this format? So, Mark, what's your response there?
What was this gentleman's name again?
Henry Eichhorn?
Eichhorn?
Sure.
Eichhorn and Finkel? Finkel is Eichhorn?
Yes.
That was my little tangent there. I don't know, Henry. I think that these casters, these huge base casters, I think they're in a category of their own. Resnick 2 specifically being near and dear to my heart. I think he would crush the ever-living crap out of this format. Him having a feat, and even him going in on his own, being able to delete an entire unit of something trivially, I think that it'd be a little too good in this 25-point format. And just combos off the top of my head with him that I think would be just disgusting. Like you just throw Corbeau with him, and most of these lists that I keep seeing have a core basis of like 2 units or 1 big elite unit and then a couple supporting models. I think that would just destroy the backbone of that format, and where your opponent would just be like, well, I guess I'm dead.
I know, hearing from like Jaden there from Line of Sight, the reason that they give for the huge base models is there's a couple of them. One of them is the idea that this is not a cheap model to get. I mean, these are all very powerful battle engines where for the same points, they're basically just better than a heavy. And especially if you're looking at these ones coming from Bahir or whatever, they're just very expensive dollar-wise. And so
none of the casters are, though, right?
Yeah, I'm getting there. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
But one of the things is that that's not really friendly to the new players. And another thing is when it comes to scenarios, huge bases causes a huge issue where you could be having these models controlling one zone, contesting a flag, doing all these different things. And so that's really why they're banning them, because of how they have scenario control. They're usually overly powerful for their points, and they're kind of too expensive for what you'd want a new player to be going for anyway. again, we talked about where bans where maybe that's not the best thing to do, and especially when it comes to casters, like they're saying here for Resnick and McKay, you can bet that somebody said like, "What? There's a tank caster? Yeah, I want to play that. Why should that be banned?" So I feel like this is too heavy of a handed approach, and that maybe they should have said no battle engines or colossals or even anything even lighter than that. But I do not feel that Resnick 2 or McKay are harder to kill than regular casters. They just got caught in that huge brush stroke capturing all of the huge bases.
Yeah, Resnick 2 is not that hard to put down. It's the damage output that he can cause. But what do I know?
Buddy, you know a lot.
Shh, don't tell me.
Next one here is from Brian Kerr, and what he says is the line separating banned models from OK ones, example Sorsha 1 and Krios 1, are banned for being reliable pop and drops. How do you define the line that separates from the Barnabas 1 or Kane 2? Seems like things get murky pretty quick. Thoughts on that one?
Well, both two of those three models I mentioned previously there. I don't understand how they've made this designation of what's okay and what's not, but I don't think they're doing it properly. That's literally the first gripe that I brought up there between this ban list was, I guess not the first. The first one was the Infernals. But the first non-Infernal gripe that I had was things like Krios 1. Like, they just kind of arbitrarily went, real good. No, let's not do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as we said before, when you draw a line in the sand to take out the best, you just make a new best. And one of the things that's already interesting that kind of showed this dynamic was the idea of how before it only goes to turn 5 and you need 3 more control points to win. And then they found that was way too easy and changed it to 4. So it turned out that in their area, they all played very defensively, going for little attrition plays and not scenario. And so that really just shows right there that some of the opinions that they have are really being biased by their own meta. And for example, I had a disagreement with Jaden and the rest of the group too about talking about TK casters, where to me, a broad stroke saying that all TK casters are banned probably isn't viable. You know, when you have things like Kane 2 shooting things off the table, who really cares if you're TKing a couple of things? Why is board control seen as oppressive when shooting yourself in the face isn't? And yeah, it gets really murky really quick. So I guess we already talked about where, like, to me, they should be doing something more like a I don't know, a prestige tier ranking where if you want to be, you know, showing that you're winning with something lowly and jank, you should be going with this. And if you want to be shooting babies, go ahead and take something from this list. And if I'm correct, Mark, your stance on this is just no bans you don't like.
No, I just think it's ridiculous. Like, the people that are making this are just players just like us. So they're going to be seeing certain things that are super overpowered, but their opinions are going to be skewed. They're going to be biased to what they see in their local areas, just like you said.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. Let's jump into the next one here. The next one here is from Michael Mooney, and I think 2 75-point lists might mitigate the ban lists for huge bases. And again, it turns out that in the end, even though they didn't really specify it in the rules, they always intended it to be 2 lists. They just never said it. Also, can we get it on a 30x30 to mirror Warcaster? Starting lines can be 3 inches, no huge bases, and 6 inches for second. Kill box 3 inches on sides, no shooting into deployment zones, turn 1. So they're really looking into trying to change actually more what's the mat you're using and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when you get into actually augmenting the size of the table and that kind of shit, I think that it gets a little too wish-washy, I guess. I don't know. There's not really a good word for it. But a little too fucky. That's the best word. When you're trying to bring these new players in and you're just trying to teach them the game, the fact that you're picking and choosing rules and models that you can use already is, again, fucky. So I don't think that changing the physical size of the playing area is going to be good, especially when you have these, like, I don't even know. Can you take cavalry models in this stupid format?
Oh yeah, you totally could. I mean, it's going to take up a lot of your 25 points, but you could do it.
Sure. Okay. So hypothetically speaking, you wait. Is Krios 3 banned?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Literally, you have Krios 3 with a unit of Vengers. Their speed 9. You take this board down to a 30 by 30. Turn 1, they're going to be right in your face. Good luck. So, like, shrinking this down when you have this larger, larger skewed format, if you will, because that's what it is. It's, again, like I said, you're going to be, my toy is more broken than your toy. Here it is. I don't think that narrowing the playing field is going to do much. You're going to be restricting these new players from learning these things like using terrain and physically distancing themselves as valuable options for strategies. So making the game smaller, I don't think is a good call.
As a side tangent, something you just said there, my toy is better than your toy, is actually the way that I've been seeing the meta right now. That either lists are looking to make Gaspy 4 as crazy as possible or Malvin and Mayhem as crazy as possible. It's all about just trying to like stack on abilities. But
100%.
Brett Fogel, one of the things he said for it was that he didn't want to be changing things whatsoever. He wants to be keeping things as close to a regular game and a regular steamroller, doesn't want to be changing things as much as possible. And for this part here, I definitely agree. I mean, you don't want people having to have different mats for Brawlmachine. That's just not really realistic. So you want to find something that keeps it on a regular mat. And what I found is that you just need to have a scenario that's active enough and live enough that they actually play the game. Because otherwise, you just have people staying in the back with like Kane 2 going like pew, 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 teleport away, and then just not caring.
No, exactly. Brett, I think I've only spoken to you maybe 3 or 4 times, but I can't agree with you more, man. Don't change. If it ain't broke, don't fucking fix it.
Next one here is from Lucky Moniker, and it says, banned models always makes me very wary, even if the ones banned so far make sense. It leads to people crying about bias or meta, even if this is a limited format. Now, we talked about banned things already, but maybe we could always talk about it again because that's always, fun to talk about. But I mean, another experience I know is, again, from doing this from 40K in fantasy, is that when you go in and you ever say that there should be this comp because these things are banned or these things or whatever, there's going to be those saying, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Because everyone's experience is different.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Like in that fact, it's super meta dependent. Like you could ban X, Y, and Z. Specifically, again, I'm going to circle back around to Krios 1. But when's the last time you saw Krios 1 on a table, regardless of point size? Like, why ban a model or something that's not being used? I don't really see a point.
Well, and especially like something like Krios 1, you could very, very easily have a new player coming to the game that has the old battle box, and who's in there? Krios 1. And so to say like, hey, we have this format that is designed for new players, but new player, you're banned because you got Krios 1, like that's
right.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah, F you for doing what we want you to do. Buying the starter set. God.
Next one is from local Andrew McCorkle, who says, does the format just become an arms race where extreme threat ranges are king? How do you realistically piece trade when you only have 2 to 3 key pieces? Is recursion unfair in a format that has such a low volume of attacks, in particular the effects that add where you don't have any counterplay with remove from play? What is the player experience for negative effects like disruption and grievous wounds in small point games? And is there a solution for factions or lists that don't have ready access to tools like cheap shield guards? So a lot to unpack there, but basically going around the idea of like, can you get a good game out of 25 points? So what are your thoughts there, Mark?
My first thought is, man, I haven't seen Andrew in forever. It's been like 24 hours. But no, you're 100% right, Andrew. It's literally, you have these models and you're condensing this point size down to where each model has its own specific interaction, and they're so detrimental when you bring these negative experience models, like even say Iris 1 or anything that causes mass stationary, or I guess stationary in general, I think that it's not nearly as balanced. You don't have any way around it. You don't have any counterplay. And then when you have these extreme threat models, like I've been saying this entire time, you're going to have people just trying to outdo each other and not really playing the game. They're just trying to one up the other person with the same shit. I don't know if that came across properly, but you know what I'm saying here, Brian?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. I mean, one of the things that makes you first think in a small point game is that people are going to just really skew things. And I mean, we saw that in our group chat, right? We're like, well, what if you really push this? What if you did a bunch of incorporeal? What if you did a bunch of armor? What if you did a bunch of this? And what I've really found so far is looking at the list and how it's actually going in actual, when it actually hits the board, is that you can't really actually skew things in 25 points as much as you can in 75. It kind of depends on what you're looking at, but you really don't have that extreme skew. And here's the thing, is that even though you can push that skew, you will have a bigger skew in 75 because it's more normal to have one list that is skew pushed all the way to 11 and then another list that says, oh, you counter this skew? Okay, great, I'll do this. Whereas in this, it's more so like, look, I need to be able to counter everything, and then I have these sideboards to be mitigating the skew. And when you know that your opponent will have that sideboard to undo your skews don't really work as well. You kind of more want to take a balanced list. So this is why I kind of think like their idea that they wanted it to be 2 lists was kind of a mistake. They should stick it with 1. But to me, what I've been seeing so far is that piece trading, super, super important. You're seeing a lot of people pushing for a range list or long range alphas. And then for different things like that, like, oh, you need to have remove from play, you need to have that. That really comes down to making sure that you do your specialists right. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
I'm trying to think of how I can put this and be the most politically correct. So you can keep going there, because it's not going to go well.
Oh, yeah? You just still don't like it?
No, I think to be as most PC as possible, I think the term is fuck this.
You just hate this format. This absolutely, hey?
Man, it's just ridiculous. It's like I said, I've been playing this game for a long time. I've seen 8, 9, 10, a dozen different small formats. None of them last. They all die out, and they get interest lost super quickly. I don't see this being
really hope that Privateer Press does step up and embrace this format, because I think this is one that really can help them a lot. But I do agree that I feel that if Privateer Press doesn't, that this one will not last the year. It really needs to have that buy-in and for them to show like, yes, we agree that this is good, because if they don't, it'll just be seen as a fan favorite.
Man, if they embrace this format, Hungerford is going to have one pissed off fat Canadian coming at him.
Aren't all Canadians fat?
No, you're not.
I'm still am technically obese.
Brian, I will literally beat you to death with your own arm.
Last one we have here is from Alexander Lee Friends Melanson. This is from our friend podcast, the Broken Coast. And all I can say about them is we have the better podcast until you put it out into another episode. So prove me wrong, put out another episode. And it says here, I think it's a work in progress. The format is needed, and I'm really happy the boys took this matter in their own hands. I think it's a beautiful way of bringing armies back down from the power creep, and it's just a fun way to play the game. This could also be introduced into Masters format, which is generally not as popular as Champions format, and a new NC HIP. I don't know what that last part means, but what do you think about all that, Mark?
Well, let me first start off by saying, Alex, you're a dear friend, but I think you're being a bit of a potato here. You're an Infernals player. How can you like this format? Yeah, I don't agree with most of that. I'm not going to lie. One of the things that really caught my attention there that he said was the fact that the Masters format is not as popular as the Champions format. Just from my experience alone, Champions is usually the vastly inferior format as far as large events goes. So I think you're a little mistaken there, my friend. But I don't see it replacing anything anywhere remotely close to the near future. The only good side I do see for this entire format being a thing is that it will draw new players in. I don't think that bringing it to large events is going to be anywhere close to remotely positive. The people that go to these large tournaments primarily are these hardcore competitive players. They're not going to want to play this weird, janky format. They're going to want to go back to the bread and butter, the core of this game, which is the competitive steamroller play.
I mean, I don't think this is a con format, but isn't this a good format to have like, hey, this will be your local game store format on one of your days to make sure that newer players can get in there and just to mix things up. And then when it's time for a serious time for the tournaments, okay, then we do a steamroller. Like, isn't there benefit in that?
I don't think there's any benefit to having this format, Brian. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to die on this hill because if you want to have these smaller, fun games, just play regular 25, 35-point games. Don't fuck with the rules. They're there for a reason. They've spent how many thousands of dollars creating them. They're perfectly fine. Just go with what we got. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So, I mean, let's build off of that. So you're saying that 25-point games are okay. So it's not that you're, like it has to be 75.
Right. I think that playing smaller games is perfectly fine. I fully support doing journeyman leagues and using those point levels as stepping stones. And depending on your meta or whatever caliber players you have, altering these rules or putting handicaps on these players so they don't go in and absolutely shit roll these newbies and green players just to help them out. I think you can do that. But I don't think that creating this format and picking and choosing what you think is okay and what's not okay and just kind of doing whatever you want, it's a viable thing, especially like we've mentioned 5, 6, 7 times, where I feel that most of these choices are meta dependent.
So if I was to run a regular steamroller, I'm allowed to run a steamroller at 25 points, and one of the variants is also the sideboard. So I could put the sideboard in there. So if I ran 25 points with sideboard, you don't have any issues with that, right?
Let's do it.
So your problem then comes in when basically I'm saying because I guess even before that, how about the best 2 out of 3? Do you agree that that's a good thing to have in there?
I'm still torn on that. Like, I do like the appeal. And the analogy you put out there that, like the sports analogy, I think is a good one, where things like the Grey Cup or the Stanley Cup or whatever big final fucking game trophy you want to call it, it's a series. It's 5, 6, 7 games long and best of. I think that's a good thing. But with time investment, like we said, normally the 75 point doesn't work. So if you did that for this 25 point magical theoretical steamroller, I don't see that being a horrible thing because we've all won and lost games on bullshit dice, either which way or the other. It happens and it sucks. Nobody likes it.
So I think we're actually pretty close to being aligned then, because if we agree that 25 points is fine and sideboards are fine and even best 2 out of 3 is fine, it seems like really the thing that's bugging you is the ban list, whether it's the FA1, whether it's the huge bases, whether it's the don't take this caster or gas before. You want it to be wide open, take whatever you want, but you're okay with the specialist, the point size, and the 2 out of 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, fuck it, bring it on. It's these random rules that are thrown in there that make absolutely no sense whatsoever, that I don't think are constructive as far as bringing in new players and benefiting the community. The small point games, sure, bring it on, let's do it.
And I think that, this might be a great way that we're ending this, where we're coming aligned, is that, I've also said, I also agree that whenever you ban things, it's not going to work out well. Now, the good news for them is that this ban list, that's not set in stone. That's something they're trying to work their way through. I really do hope that they turn it into like a prestige tier list as opposed to a straight up ban list, especially when they're already saying that they are knowing that locally you might just allow things that are banned anyway. So what's the point of a banned list? But exactly. I mean, really, if we're both happy with all the other main parts of the format and it's really just the banned part, like that's really just like the details.
Nailed it.
Look at that. Here we are. Maybe it's a thing where like we just had to drink enough and then we're friends again.
I don't think we were ever not friends.
Well, no, but I mean, we had to be, we had to have that little brotherly fight, just for the entertainment of the fans.
It's true. It's true. Next time we'll film it.
All right. So we'll end with that. Where would you be fair in saying this, that Brawlmachine has potential, but the ban list, it's fucked. So we just say that?
I will agree with the part where you said it's fucked.
Oh, I couldn't even get you to agree with that.
No, because the Brawlmachine is not okay.
We should play a game. We should play a game and then get your reactions after that.
All right.
All right, Mark. I think we're coming to an hour, so we got to close things up. Any last thing you want to talk about?
I think I'd like to end it and say Brawlmachine's fucked.
This is how we get enemies. If you're wondering how we could have a podcast, you know what? That's wrong. We were already being very clear that our arch enemies is Line of Sight, where every single time we could talk about how we always beat Chandon. We were already establishing that.
First of all, I'd like to say at least I know his name's not Chandon. It's Chandler. Second of all, earlier in the cast I said they don't even play Infernals, which is super wrong. Chandler does play Infernals. But I call in my shots.
I'll also say that I've also finished my whole bottle of wine. I don't know how you're doing with that vodka, but I'm all done on this side.
I thought you were drinking out of a mason jar.
Well, yeah, that's how you do it.
Oh, you didn't just drink straight from the bottle?
Oh, no, you put it in the jar and then you grind it down.
Well, the fact that it's a bottle of wine and not a box of wine, I am proud of you, sir. You're classing it up.
In my own Alberta way.
Berta!
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. There's no spot here where you can be putting your comments, but if you want to go on to the Malorian Facebook page or the Shoulda Boosted page, put your comments there. That'd be great. And then otherwise, I guess we'll catch you later.
Take it easy, guys.